Welcome to sunny and hot Puerto Vallarta. I am here to interview Kim, who lives in this house behind me, and she is younger and not retired, going back and forth between the U.S. and Mexico, has this house in a very Mexican neighborhood, and also she's going to talk about dating here in Mexico. So let's hop inside.
Hi, I'm Kim. I'm actually a pediatrician from Chicago, but I no longer do patient care, which allows me to be more flexible and spending time in Mexico. I have been visiting Puerto Vallarta, where we are currently, for almost 20 years now. It's been about 18 years since the first time I came to Vallarta. And I came as my first solo vacation and fell in love because the people were so friendly. Both the tourists and the locals made me feel welcome. I met people to hang out with, even though I had come here on my own. So I was instantly hooked and started coming back multiple times a year ever since. I never thought I'd be the person who fell in love with one location and stopped traveling the world. I can't say I stopped traveling the world, but it definitely makes it harder when I always want to come to my own spot. So that was how I fell in love with Puerto Vallarta. And then in 2018, after all those years of staying in virtually every type of resort, Airbnb, private rental, every part of town you can think of, I finally decided it was time to buy a house. And I was interested in buying a house. I looked at a few condos. There was some condos, some new construction then, but not the boom that we're having right now in Puerto Vallarta. And a lot of those look just like the ones next to them, so I was really interested in finding something with a little more character. So I looked in a couple different neighborhoods in Puerto Vallarta, but I wanted something that was relatively inexpensive, but in decent shape and a little bit of work I could live in right away. So I was looking primarily in more local neighborhoods, and ultimately I am here in a neighborhood called Colonia Aramara in Puerto Vallarta. Most of my neighbors are Mexican and have lived here for several years. My house is sort of colonial style, more colorful Mexican decor, so I'm really happy to have settled down. I don't live in Mexico full time. I do come here about half time right now. I'm not a snowbird either. I still have cats in Chicago, and I have a significant other here in Mexico, so I go back and forth about 3 to 4 weeks at a time in each location, back and forth. So it's been great. I'm thankful that my job is remote and lets me do that. I'm not really semi-retired. I'm still pretty much full-time at this point, but I'm able to work from Mexico when I want to.
So I'm going to have Kim talk first about her job, because I know a lot of folks are interested in remote work. And then also I want to have her talk about her house and her neighborhood, because a lot of people are interested in moving here and what's available and kind of how Americans or Canadians tend to live when they move to Mexico. So let's start with the job.
I am a pediatrician by training, a kid doctor. I worked for many years in a children's hospital at a medical school, teaching, seeing patients, doing research. Obviously that lifestyle wouldn't let me be living in Mexico when I needed to be on site to see patients. But about 6 years ago now, I switched to doing clinical research for a pharmaceutical company. And what that means is that I am the person at the company who writes a clinical trial and who works with the doctors that actually have patients. In my case, I work on cancer trials. And I, then analyze the evidence and write up the papers and talk to the FDA about getting drugs approved, etc. And so since COVID, we have realized that that is a job that can be done remotely. I actually went through 2 jobs during COVID where I never went to the office, and now I'm on another new job recently. I finally went and met some coworkers at that job, but I was hired to be fully remote, and that just gives me a lot of flexibility. The nice thing about Puerto Vallarta for me, with being based in Chicago, is it's the same time zone. So I can go back and forth. I don't even have to really tell anybody which country I'm in. It doesn't make any difference to the team at work. They know I'm always on Central Time Zone and available. Got good Wi-Fi signal, able to do what I need to do. So that's been a blessing that I can now live in Vallarta about half-time. It's a big thing for people to want to get out of their healthcare jobs these days that do tie them to a clinical site and have more flexibility like I do. The good news is there are more and more resources, conferences, websites, Facebook pages that have networking and opportunities. There also are, creative ways to think about what you might want to do working for a pharma company like I do, insurance companies, etc. There really are a lot of what we call non-clinical jobs, or jobs that you don't have to be tied to where the patients are. So I think healthcare seems like it would be the challenging field to be able to do what I do, but there actually are a fair number of opportunities out there, especially post-COVID. People have realized that things we used to do in an office can be done remotely, even safely when things like patient data and privacy concerns are in order. Technology has brought us a long way, and a lot of those jobs can be done from anywhere.
Quick pause before we move on. If you have not already clicked the subscribe button and the little bell and the little all message thing to make sure that you get notified of future videos, be sure to do that now.
This is my local home, as I mentioned, in Colonia Automata. It is, again, a pretty local neighborhood, actually one of the older neighborhoods in Vallarta from what I hear. What I liked about the house is that it has a colonial style, so we've got rounded arches on the doorways and windows that were really attractive, and a little more color, not just a white, sterile, new construction type environment. And the other thing is the house was actually built in phases. You can kind of see different sections and tell that they're different ages, and because of that, there also are sort of random openings and windows in different places. One of the things you can see in some of the more local neighborhoods, especially where the homes are older, is in order to keep them cool without AC, they are very concrete, but also not very many windows. And my home does have sort of random pops of light coming in that made it a little more comfortable, a little more homey to me. One thing about local homes is, when you buy them, there generally are no appliances. So I did have to put in a refrigerator, a stove. I bought nicer high-end appliances. Those were up to me. There was hot water in the house, both in the home, and there's actually an attached apartment with a separate entrance, and that had a hot water heater as well, but neither one had air conditioning. Another plus, I guess, if you look at it that way about Mexico, is the way we do air conditioning in the homes is room by room. So I was able to put mini splits in my bedroom, which is what's most important, especially this time of year in the summer. It gets quite hot and does not cool down at night. I put 2 units in the apartment when I bought it, thinking that I would rent the apartment out short term, although right now the apartment's rented out long term, so probably need to invest in some air conditioning in my living room one of these days, especially now that I'm spending more time working from Vallarta. The house has a studio, they call them in Mexico, which is sort of a bonus room. I'm not sure always what makes it a studio as opposed to an additional bedroom, but in my house it's upstairs in the house, and it's actually a really nice big space with a balcony and a lot of windows. The only reason I haven't made it my master bedroom yet is there's no bathroom on that level. So one of these days that will be my first major construction project, to turn the studio into a master bedroom. But yeah, I've got a current master bedroom, 1.5 baths in the house, plus a bath in the apartment. So for around 100,000 US in 2018, I got quite a bit of space, a fair bit of work to make it to the standards that most of us have when coming from the US or Canada. But I was able to move in without too much work and start enjoying it right away. The neighborhood that I mentioned, Colonia Aramara, it's called. It's in a nice location, so we're not too far from the airport, on the way to downtown. Most tourists are familiar with where the cruise ships come in and where a lot of the tour boats leave from. It's about 6 blocks back from the ocean, directly behind where the cruise ships park, and also very close to a local neighborhood called PTL, which is where a lot of traditional, Mexican homes that have been there for a long time, and a lot of people who work in other parts of Vallarta live in PTL. So it's actually a nice location, central to a lot of things. It, like other parts of Vallarta, has been growing along the stretch of highway closer to the ocean. Lots of new condominium buildings are going up even near here. There are some, more like gated communities with pools that more expats live in. My community is not. It's an open, older neighborhood. We have a nice park in the middle of the neighborhood that actually is very popular. We get basketball leagues and soccer leagues and Zumba classes, and so there's actually a lot of activity in the park, and a lot of people come from different neighborhoods as well. So it's very secure. I've never felt any issues in the neighborhood. When we park here, if someone visits, we park on the street without problem. So yeah, it's been great. And as I said, most of my neighbors are Mexican. I do speak Spanish, so I've gotten to know a couple of them relatively well, and I've really enjoyed checking out a neighborhood that is totally different than where I live in Chicago. Part of the house is a little parking pad. All of the houses have what kind of looks like a little courtyard, but it's really meant to be the parking for the house. Mine is more of a courtyard because I don't have a car. I don't have residency, at least not yet, and that's the next step for me. But I also actually have dated a number of locals here in Vallarta. That was a good impetus for me to learn Spanish, and I do speak Spanish pretty well now. I have a lot of, in addition to the people I've dated, I have a lot of local friends, and getting to know their families who don't speak English, it was important to me to learn Spanish. But as I was saying about the car, I usually have access to a car through a local, through someone that I'm dating, and as I said, when we park here, we park on the street. It's quite safe. It's not all that easy to park in some other parts of Vallarta. Down in Old Town, a lot of the tourist areas, it's best to just be able to take an Uber or a taxi. Pre-COVID, I also took the bus a lot. The bus is easy. There are a lot of buses here in Vallarta, but they can get a little crowded. So I rely on Uber more these days. But getting around Vallarta, being able to park in some of the more local areas away from the crowds of downtown is really quite doable.
So dating, I want Kim to cover dating locals, so let's go right there.
Yeah, that's definitely something that people are always interested in hearing about. I actually first dated someone who was local here in Vallarta, probably 12 years ago, long before I had the house. Initially, the first couple times that I dated someone local, it was someone who worked with tourists, someone who spoke pretty good English. But as I mentioned, it's a good impetus for me to learn Spanish, wanting to get to know someone better, wanting to get to know their families. So I had, as I said, dated a couple people who spoke English pretty well and worked with tourists. That's still probably the easiest way, and the way that most people I know who have dated locals, who are not locals themselves, have met people in restaurants or on the beach, etc. The most recent person that I'm dating now actually was my Uber driver from my house down to the beach one day. He did not think we were going to have a chat, but he assumed that I would not speak Spanish, but he took the wrong route out of my neighborhood, and I told him there was a shortcut out the back side of the neighborhood, and he did a double take when I said it in perfect Spanish, and then we chatted the rest of the way down to the beach of about a half-hour drive, and now we've been together for several months. So, as I said, one of the reasons I love Vallarta is how friendly everybody is. That's true for tourists and expats as well as for locals. How many of the locals you can meet will depend on your Spanish, because not all of them speak English, but most of them are willing to try and interested in learning some English, and really do enjoy meeting the people who have chosen to make Vallarta their home or their vacation destination. So it's a very friendly place, and actually I have had more luck dating in Vallarta than I have in Chicago for the last several years.
So that is so true among dating. I'm married, but I have so many more friends in Mexico than I have in the United States, just because it's so much easier to make friends down here. But next, I want Kim to talk about kind of the future, maybe a little bit about the past before she gets to the future, but let's hear what's in the future for her.
I am 50 now, just turned 50 last month, and as I said, it's been about 4 years that I've been living here part-time since I bought the house, but I had been visiting multiple times a year before that, really planning on when I could do it, when I could have a place to be here part-time and have a job that allowed me to be here part-time. But also it made sense to buy my house before prices continued to go up, to start to be established in Mexico, because my ultimate goal is to retire here and to hopefully be able to do that early. I'm hoping I can do that by maybe 55, 60 at the latest. That will mean having to work full-time until then. Another thing I hadn't mentioned is that I also have bought a piece of land, a good-sized piece of land we go by meters here, so it's about 1,000 square meters on a beach called Playa Platanitos in Nayarit, which is not too far from San Blas, and that's where I really want to retire. That's kind of still, at this point, the middle of nowhere. It's not even a town, it's just a beach with restaurants and a couple shops on it, and that'll be my place to build a retirement villa. And then actually having the property here in Vallarta and being able to rent it out can give me a little boost to my retirement income as well, and help keep things affordable, as I don't have an income in the US any longer in the not too distant future.
So there we go. I think we've covered just about everything about Kim's life here in Mexico. And so there are other folks that I've interviewed just like this, other folks that can maybe inspire you to move to Mexico. You'll find them over here. And I will see you in the next video. Hasta luego.